So the news broke that the legendary Snyder Cut, yes, it does exist, will be released on HBO Max in 2021. But the question I ask is, are there any other films that deserve such a treatment? Well, I gathered a list of 4 films, that's right, 4 films that I think deserve the Snyder Cut treatment. So, let's talk about it. Hello, all my nerd friends out there. Welcome to another episode of Nerd News. I'm your host, Chris Chavez. Sorry, I hit the camera a little bit. And boy, oh boy, if you saw my last episode, this one, I talked about Zack Snyder and the legendary Snyder Cut finally being released because of you, the fans. And if you didn't know that that was actually happening, well, now you know. Or watch the episode and then you'll know. But yeah, I asked this question to myself of, what other movies do I think should have the same treatment? And there are a lot of movies that I think could benefit from this list. But I just wanted to narrow it down to 4 films. So these films, you probably have seen all of these except for one. And it's the last one on the list, but we'll get there. And before we get into today's episode, guys, just like we do each and every episode, if this is your first time visiting my channel, please, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that like, the subscribe, and the notification bell. That little notification bell will go towards fixing the CGI mouth on Henry Cavill's face. Yeah, that joke never gets old. Now, the thing about the Snyder Cut, the fact that it's getting it got such like crazy momentum from the fans is because there was so much left out on the cutting room floor. Now, this isn't a new thing when it comes to feature films or filmmaking, the filmmaking process or editing process in general. In order to cut the time down from like a 3-hour movie to a 2-hour movie, and the funds that it takes to make big A-list blockbuster movies, you gotta trim the fat. I mean, original script ideas are lost, specific sequences that could flush out the story even more get cut out and lost. Heck, even the original vision from the director is just gone. But with that, let's begin the list with a movie that had an amazing, let's just say one of the best trailers I have seen in a long time. If they gave awards out for trailers, this would have won an Oscar for trailers. And the movie that I'm talking about is David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Now, a lot can be said from this lackluster DC movie that featured Jared Leto as the Joker, who made some acting choices, if you will. You see, actors have to make a specific choice to define their character, and Jared Leto did the Nicolas Cage effect and just went for it. Now, David Ayer did have a lot of cuts from this movie, but more so in that of the Joker. I mean, there's a slew of Joker scenes that were cut out from the film that is just hours and hours of content, guys. I'm gonna make you hurt real bad. Now, Jared Leto has not shied away from all the footage, essentially, all the scenes that he filmed. He is very disappointed. Let's use disappointed. Yes, that's a better word than I think the words that he chose. I mean, they asked Jared about this, and he said, there are so many scenes cut out from the film, I don't even know where to begin. Now, with watching Suicide Squad, you know where they were going with the Joker and Harley Quinn. Do you think if they added more Joker scenes, it would have flushed out their storyline a little bit more, or even it just gave you a little bit more of a backstory into that Joker? I mean, here's a good example. The Joker was only seen about 15 minutes in the movie. He was only on screen for 15 minutes. So imagine how much was cut out of that. A good example of that is Hannibal Lecter in the original Silence of the Lambs. He was on screen for almost about the same amount of time, if not a little bit less, and he stole that movie. Yet again, it just goes down to acting, guys. Yeah. So David Ayer, the director of this film, was asked the same question about the missing footage, or deleted footage, if you will, and he tweeted this: "My cut would be easy to complete. It would be incredibly cathartic for me. It's exhausting getting your butt kicked for a film that got the Edward Scissorhands treatment. The film I made has never been seen." So in the Suicide Squad case, I don't know if it was David Ayer's, I guess you would say, vision, or his idea to get things cut, or if it was his studio. In my mind, I think it's the studio. I mean, DC has a bad reputation for rushing their projects and not flushing an actual solid script. So in David Ayer's case, he was forced to, like you said, Edward Scissorhands the script. But the crazy thing is, we are getting a reboot of this film from the writer and the director of both Guardians of the Galaxy and that of James Gunn. So that might do all the wrongs that the first Suicide Squad made, except for the casting of Margot Robbie because she is just bloody brilliant as Harley Quinn. Interesting fact, the studio is actually thinking about letting David Ayer release the David Ayer cut, if you will. But it all hinders on the success in that of Justice League. If that succeeds, then all these films are gonna have a second chance, and like I said in my previous video, this might change the way filmmaking, this might just change filmmaking altogether, essentially. The next film we're gonna move on to is a film that had so much potential, a film that we thought was going to be amazing, and it fell flat on its face, worse than Suicide Squad. And I'm talking about Josh Tank's Fantastic Four reboot. Yeah, that Fantastic Four. It's clobbering time. So when the first trailer came out for the first family of Marvel here in Fantastic Four, we were greeted with a more serious tone, which was fine. We could see where they were headed. But then when the film was released and we got to see it on the big screen, it all left us with one lingering question. Why? When you read the backstory on Josh Tank and his self-destructive mode that he went into during the editing process of this movie, well, he kind of did it to himself. So Josh Tank tweeted this a long time ago when the film came out. Josh said, "A year ago, I had a fantastic version of this. It would have received great reviews, but you'll probably never see it. It's really rough." Short but sweet, and he also could have said, "Yeah, I done messed up." So one of the funniest reviews on this suggested that if you watch Fantastic Four, you'll know what not to do during filmmaking. Ouch. Josh left out so much footage of this movie that they could have easily filmed a two-parter, if you will. Now, if you watch this film, you know a lot was left out because the film, it's not a complete cohesive film like any other normal film that's ever been released. Let me explain. So a typical film has a first act, a second act, and a third act, right? This film has a first act and a third act. That's right, there was no second act. There was so much cut out of the second act that it just jumped, nothing got resolved, you never got to spend time with the character developing and understanding these character arcs, you just were left with a beginning and an end, and there is no middle ground. This means middle ground. But with Marvel actually getting the rights back to Fantastic Four, we know we're gonna see a Marvel's actual version of them, which it's Marvel. It's going to be fantastic. We already know. But if Josh actually had the means to make the version of the film that he wanted and re-release it to us, would you want to see it? I mean, we have the new one coming out at some point, or something that we thought we were gonna get. It's up to you guys. You're the fans. Clearly all the studios are listening to the fans, so you got a voice now, guys. But one thing about the Fantastic Four that I actually did like, I did like the way that the Thing looked. It looked a lot better than the Michael Chiklis one from the original Fantastic Four. He more looked like a Nerf ball. Next, we're gonna move on to a Brad Pitt movie, which the interesting thing about this film is his highest grossing film that he's been in. And that film, guys, is the zombie pandemic world-ending World War Z. Now, this book-to-film adaptation from director Mark Foster had the fans split. The fans that didn't read the book loved it. The fans that read the book hated it. You can't please both, guys. Unless you're Peter Jackson. Now, for this film, a large portion of the film was cut out from the ending. Now, the ending that was originally shot was going to give a lot of the characters a little more context as to why they were there in the first place. For example, Matthew Fox's character, he played a police officer. We see him in the film for like 2 seconds getting off a helicopter, putting Brad Pitt's family on a helicopter and taking off, and that's it. At first, I was like, wow, that's a short cameo. But he had a lot more to do, and there was a reason why he was there. We just never got to see why. Also, the plane crash in the second act, there was a lot more to that kind of built in to the actual final act of the movie. And yet again, it's just, they cut just a big chunk of that out. It's like they got a zombie who bit the film, and I was like, no. That was a bad joke. So if Mark got his version of this film, I think the fans of both the book and the movie would find a common ground and actually enjoy it. I mean, the fans from the book needed a big sigh of relief, after, reading something that they've read and they pictured in their mind what these scenes look like, only to watch the film and it's completely different. I get it. But yet again, like some of the movies on this list, we are getting a sequel to World War Z. We are going to get a sequel to World War Z. Not sure when, but it is in development. It's been greenlit, so maybe we'll see flashbacks of those scenes, you know, they can easily use those in the sequel and that would work. It'd be a neat way to fill in the gaps and a cheaper way to fill in the gaps. Now, the last film on this list that should get the Snyder Cut treatment is The Avengers. No, not this Avenger. Those Avengers. Yeah, it's one of those films, I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, well, let's talk about it. Now, director Jeremiah Chechik, I think I'm saying that wrong. Anyways, he adapted this 60s spy drama into a live blown feature film. And when this film came out, it was almost like The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where it had a great concept, a great idea, fantastic actors. It had Sean Connery in it. But the movie just fell flat. I think it was just a bad case of a good concept, but at the wrong time to release a movie like that. Now, just to give you an example on how much was cut out, the film was originally 115 minutes, but they slashed that from 115 to 89 minutes. That is a lot. Now, with any adaptation, book, or TV show, you're going to want to stay close to the source material without losing the context of what is going on in that show. And for this, the director pretty much just was like, yeah, we got to cut this down. I don't care, cut it. Now, Jeremiah loved his project so much that he even went on the record and said he would recut this movie for free. I mean, that's either one of two things. That's either a very desperate director or a very passionate director and just wants his vision out there in the world. Either way, going from 115 minutes to 89, I mean, that sounds like the studio's fault, like every other project in Hollywood. Now, with a ton of material left on the cutting room floor, he could easily take that lost footage and kind of make you could do a little spin-off or a little short film based on how much was left out of that film. Now, like I said, it had Sean Connery, Uma Thurman, and Lord Voldemort was in it. But heck, if Mark wants to get his vision out there for free, I say let him do it. You know what I mean? What's the harm in that? I mean, it might revamp that franchise for an actual reboot. You never know. And that, you know, he could helm the reboot and finally get to say what he wanted to say with the original film that didn't really pan out. But guys, those are just 4 films that I think should deserve a Snyder Cut. Which one of these films do you particularly would like to be re-released with new footage? Let me know in the comments below. And like I said before, guys, the success of Justice League, the Snyder Cut, everything's going to fall. Everyone's going to be watching that to see if it succeeds. If it does, the floodgates are going to open and all of these films are going to be like, you know what? I cut about an hour for my first film. I think I'm going to release my cut of this film. Filmmaking could change and we might be in the presence of history. But thank you guys for hanging out with me and checking out some of these films. I'm sure there's a ton more that we can do. Maybe I'll do a part 2 on this. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. And until next time, remember, every film gets a second chance. Maybe.